You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
What's up, Matt?
Andy, what's up, brother?
To quote Nelly, it's getting hot in here.
Oh my gosh, super hot. It's going to be 108 today, I think. And that's just in the studio.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting hot in her.
Yeah. You know, I was at a party once, a shoe party, and Nelly was there.
A shoe party?
It was about 10 years past his prime,
Really?
but it was still cool for me to see
Nelly
him.
is not past his prime, okay?
And we should ask Jasmine.
He's still a hot topic, for sure.
I thought she was going to say, who's Nelly?
No, what? I have Nelly CDs in my house.
He's got that country grammar.
You're already dating yourself.
He's got that country grammar.
Yeah.
Can't stop that. Jasmine, how are you doing?
Great. Trying to stay cool, but
Yeah.
good. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. She got the ice pack on her head in here.
She does.
She knows how to do it.
She does.
People can learn.
She's
Tank
going
topped
to be
out.
fanning herself. And,
I need a fan.
you know, one of the things I think it's difficult to do in the summer is run. It's difficult to run any time of the
That's
year.
true, especially when you have a car.
Yeah, I'll run alongside your car, Andy.
Exactly.
So one of the things we want to do, the other day, my wife and I were in a specialty running store, and she was trying on different types of shoes. Lisa's a runner, and as an organization, we represent a lot of the running brands.
Many
And
of them,
so
yep.
we had a gentleman, Doug Ricketts, who's store manager at the Pacers running store in Fairfax, Virginia, who was super knowledgeable, was willing to answer Lisa's 100,000 questions.
Multitude, I'm sure, yes.
And was patient and knew that we had a relationship with the brand, and so we were going to be going back to the brand anyway to talk to him about it and getting a pair of shoes. And I started talking to Doug about having a podcast, and this was like, I don't know, 36 hours ago. And next thing you know, it's like sucked into the Shoe and Show vortex. We snagged him. So Doug, welcome to Shoe and Show. We're grateful to have you here, man.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So why don't you educate our listeners on what the Pacers footprint is, how you got started, where you're located, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So Pacers has 5 stores in the DMV. We've got in Arlington and Alexandria, Navy Yard, 14th Street, and my Fairfax store. So we've been in run specialty technically on the run since 1991. The current family has owned it since just after 2001. That's Chris Farley and Adrian Farley.
Mm-hmm. And Chris is like all over radio. You hear him,
Yeah.
I think I hear him on local, like the Sports Junkies and other things. So he's a known entity here in the DMV.
Yeah, no, he's great. And so just after when they purchased it, he really built the brand out, and they worked really hard to make sure that it appealed to runners, walkers, really everyone. And you were just saying, that it's hot outside, and I will say, Chris's answer to that probably, I can't 100% speak for him, would be, but there's always times to run.
Right.
And I definitely agree with that.
Early morning. Very
that's
early.
right.
So let's talk about specialty running in particular, because it's a unique beast in our industry, because we are moving to like an e-commerce. E-commerce is surging in our industry. Even when brick and mortar is flat, e-commerce has seen a lot of growth. People are becoming more and more kind of, the selling of shoes online is becoming more and more democratized. People are more comfortable with it. But it is hard to get the sit and fit. It is hard to get the analysis, the gait analysis, all the things that you guys do on a daily basis for your customers. Tell us why specialty running, and I'm bullish about it because of the unique customer service you provide. What do you guys do for your customers on a daily basis as they walk through the door?
I think that everyone who works there is very much a runner, but we're also people who understand that people have issues and that not everyone is the same.
Right.
There is no one size fits all fitting process, and when everyone comes through that door, we want to make sure that we're going through the motion step by step, A to Z, and we don't skip anything.
Right.
If we skip something, then we skip something that makes them and their running situation or their walking situation or their athletic situation in general unique. And if we miss that little unique piece, that affects our ability to give customer service. So we make sure that 100% of the time we're not missing that piece.
Right.
So I hope that your wife felt like that as well.
She did.
And this is what we do on a daily basis.
Right.
And we love doing it.
What are those things that when somebody comes in and you say there's steps that you take? What are the core steps that you take when you first engage? I guess you're asking them what they're looking to do with the shoe, and then their comfort level, their fit level. Do you look at their gait, their stride, things like that? What do you guys do in the store?
Absolutely. So when someone comes into the door, we immediately initiate a process called the fit process. And that's really asking people a lot of questions about their goals. We're asking them questions about how they're running, what they want to do. And we, from there, try and figure out, okay, what shoes are we going to be working with this person? Is this person wanting to run a 450 mile, or does this person want to run a sub-3 marathon? Or is this person just someone that's coming in that just wants to do a race, or just wants to get out and train for life? From there, we go in and we start bringing out things that are applicable to what they do. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we watch them walk. We want to make sure we watch them run on the treadmill. And then we get a general sense of how much support they're going to need when they're running. And then from there, we bring out the options that make sense for them. We ask questions about, now, although we're not doctors, we do ask questions about injuries, because we want to make sure, first of all, we're not making them do something that's going to hurt them. And then secondly, that we provide information on things that could perhaps help those injuries that they're having. From there, we talk about the other things, the nuts and bolts, the things that make running a little bit more comfortable for everyone, like socks. But for the most part, we're talking about exactly what they need to make them comfortable and to make them successful runners or walkers or whatever it is they're doing.
Right. Well, what I thought was really interesting is that it seems to me that as a sales staff and as a manager, you've also, like you said, you guys are all runners. So you had a story about running, was it the Marine Corps marathon or some marathon?
Yeah.
And it was like the worst thing you've ever been through in your life, but you're doing it again. And Lisa was like, why are you doing it again? And so you have that passion for the sport that's so different than any other sport, because I've never run, my father's run 3 marathons, I've run 0. And just because I just don't think I have the mental capacity to do it, but nevertheless, you've been in the trenches and you understand kind of the injuries and the pains that come along with a major race like that, so that you were able to advise your customers on what to look for, what types of shoes they need for that kind of activity.
Yeah, I think Marine Corps Marathon for me, when I finished it, it was nowhere near what I had expected to hit, and a lot of that came down to how I trained for it.
Right.
And, I'm kind of ashamed to say that I didn't train as well as I could have.
Right.
But, as soon as I finished, I think a lot of folks will say, I'm never doing that again.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. Like
Right.
most people say that, and actually most people do it again.
Uh-huh.
But when I finished that race, the first thing I told myself was, I looked at my clock and my watch, and I was like, I want to do better.
Right.
And that was just something that resonated with me, and I kept thinking about it. And that night, my wife had organized like this. Do you know like the giant plastic balls that you get into?
Oh, yeah,
you
of course.
That's how you tackle it. So she organized an event with friends. Oh man, we did that and it hurt. it was awful. But all through that, I was like, you know what? I hope next year I get to this event right after MCM and I feel good.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I would be saying I'm never doing this again in like mile 1 because it's such a taxing thing. But do you ever really fully train like you should for a marathon? That's what I'm so busy in life. Like I think that I would always leave something on the table when it comes to training for a marathon.
That was my first marathon, actually. MCM was the first. Yeah, I think a lot of people really do invest in it. And I know a lot of people in our running groups and at Pacers Running, Chris Farley himself, I know that those people invest in their marathons.
Yeah.
And it's not just the financial investment, it's the time. And it is time consuming, but it's doable and
Right.
it's fun.
Speaking of investing in a marathon, talk to us about how the brands invest. How do you interact with the brands? What's kind of the sales structure for a typical brand in the region? And then how do they interact with something like the Marine Corps Marathon, which is kind of a Super Bowl, if you will, or a big event like the Boston or the New York? What do the brands do? It seems very competitive as they compete with each other for certain runners, certain endorsements, people to wear their product. Talk to us about how you guys interact with the brands, and then how the brands interact with the big events.
So I can kind of talk to you about how Pacers Running interacts with other marathons and other brands,
Yeah.
to the extent that it's just our store. I'm not 100% sure how brands communicate with like MCM and
Sure.
other, but I will say that with us, we do have partners out there that we work with. Like a few years ago, I worked at a Hoka booth for rock and roll.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the first 20 to 30 minutes, I had a bunch of people coming up to me telling me how much they loved the brand. And really, our job as a run specialty store is to get people what they need.
Right.
But then also to show them things that they didn't know existed. And several years ago, you know, no one would have heard of Hoka.
Right.
And, you know, there's brands like Brooks and New Balance and the shoe fitting brands that we really want to work with that sort of amplify the run specialty network.
Right.
And so I can speak from a manager's level that
Yeah, go for it.
that I love doing this, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then so in terms of MCM, we actually partner up with folks that in terms of like races, we do expos with them.
Okay.
So like MCM last year, we had a booth there, and we had various like I think On was there. We had Ultra. We had some other things that were set up that we were selling, and just talking to people about and getting the word out.
Yeah. And On is a European brand that seems to be kind of really, you know, hitting its stride, if you pardon the pun, right now, right? They're more and more. They're in more and more doors across the U.S.
Yeah, they're doing great. I mean, they're a really nice brand. We don't have them out at Fairfax right now.
Yeah.
But a few of our other stores do carry them.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about half the world's population loves change, and about the other half hates it. And what I found with members of my family is that they get locked into a certain, you know, the Saucony Guide 9 or whatever, and then a certain year, like a vintage wine. And then the moment that Saucony or Hoka or they come out with the next greatest thing, that thing that you want to, you know, introduce to the runner, the new technology, the new, you know, arch support, the new outsole, the new whatever, it disrupts about half the population, the running population. How do you deal with someone who's come in and is like, I've got to have this shoe. I've been running this shoe for years, and they changed it, and I don't like it. I bet you run into that quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is an everyday issue for a lot of runners, actually for me as well.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we have to do is be patient. If somebody comes in with something that's worked well for them for years, we can't immediately be like, oh, well, do you want the new one? Because that's obviously not where we want to go.
Right.
So that's where we sort of enact that fit process, where we're like, come on in. All right, this isn't working out for you now, but let's make sure we get you something that does.
Right.
We never want, you know, honestly, the first thing I would do if it was the Guide 10 that you were saying is that I'd probably look into our system and say, well, let me see if we do have any Guide 10s left.
Right.
And if we do, we'd ask them, you know, would you like that one? And if it ends up that it's not there, and the new guide, the Guide ISO, isn't working for them, it's the fit process.
Right.
And we make sure that we are getting something that makes sense for them, and that hopefully they'll find a shoe that they can use for years to come.
Right. Yeah.
What do you guys do in terms of continual consumer engagement? So you probably have a core group of people who come in every 4 or 6 months, get new running shoes. But how do you continually engage with those folks? Are you guys using social media to announce new product launches? Are you doing run clubs? Are you bringing in podiatrists to talk about foot health, things like that? What are you guys doing in store to create kind of an experience beyond an engagement out to the community? What kind of things are you guys looking at doing?
So speaking from Fairfax, I do think that we do all of the above.
Yeah.
Our running group is a group that is invested in running.
Right.
And we don't usually try and, promote sales to that. Well, what we want to do is have the running group for the running group and just have people that are really in love with the sport and coming out and just talking and sharing their experiences. And that to us is a good investment because we're hearing what people have to say. And then in terms of like social media, yeah, we do have social media that talks to people who have been close to the sport of running and who just are thinking about getting into it. And we do that from Facebook, Instagram, and all different facets of social media.
Cool. What about kind of technologies or software or anything you use in store to help manage inventory? What are you guys using in store that like kind of helps out your operations on day to day when someone comes in the door, whether you're having to look up inventory at different stores or anything that helps you manage the store better? What are you guys using that is kind of new or interesting, or is it the same old stuff you've been using? It's just gets upgraded, I guess,
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty classic stuff. I mean,
Right.
we have an operating system called Rix, which is great. I mean, in terms of inventory and in terms of looking at how we're doing during the year, and just in general, it's a really powerful tool, and it helps us do our job a lot better.
Cool.
What's your personal run regimen? Kind of if you're in the groove but not necessarily training for a marathon, what's your kind of day to day and I'm running?
So right now I'm actually, when I first started working at Pacers, I was doing about 50 miles a week.
Wow.
I was about 162 pounds. I mean, just talking about weight here.
Sure.
And now I'm right around 200, and a lot of that has to do that, unfortunately, I have cut back just a tad. But
Yeah.
what I am doing is I'll do 2 days of 4 miles, and then I'll do a track workout, and then also stadiums as well. Because I'm
gotcha.
trying to develop my speed back and get things that I used to have as a runner back. And
So when
stronger.
you when you say stadiums, like running the stairs?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. So one of the things I like to do, this is kind of stupid, but I have the Nike Run app, and I like running in unique locations. So I like looking through all the places around because I have to travel for my job. So last week I ran or 2 weeks ago I ran in Shenzhen and in Hong Kong, and then I've run in Nicaragua and I've run in Florence, Italy,
And then he's also on a Z-Pack for all the air quality issues in China.
That's right. I run with a mask,
Like Michael Jackson with his monkey on his back to add the extra weight.
Oh man, what was the monkey's name?
Bubbles.
Bubbles. That's right. I got bubbles on my back. So the turns these conversations take. So I really like tracking. So tell me the technology you use personally, because you can track the heck out of everything you do. And part of me is in this mode of like analoging my life a little bit. So like backing up from some of that. So I just have the Run app. I don't have all the fancy watches and all the stuff. But kind of what do you employ when it comes to running? And you lived in Brazil for a while,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So you were probably were you running around Brazil as
I was.
well?
Yeah, I did a 10K there, actually.
Cool.
It was very hot.
Yeah, I bet.
So the technology that I use, I do use a Garmin watch. I actually use the Phoenix. A lot of that has to do with, I like to see my heart rate.
Right.
I like to track my activity throughout the day. And I really like to see my pace as well.
Yeah.
So the Garmin app kind of gives me goals that I don't even realize that I'm shooting for. Like
Right.
if I am running 6.5 miles or so, all of a sudden it'll pop up and it was like, oh, you've run your fastest 10K,
Right.
or you've run your fastest 5K or anything like that, or you've done the most stairs for the day. I'm like,
Right.
okay, cool. that's a new
Like
something to hit.
gamification to an
Right.
extent.
That is true.
Setting goals against yourself, especially if you're running by yourself, you need something to
That's true.
push you on.
Yeah.
And then it has a coaching app as well.
What about product? Let's talk a little bit about innovation. I mean, the running shoe business is probably one of the hardest products in terms of adding value for the customer, right? Like if you're making a pair of basic shoes you're going to sell at a big box retailer, they can be just mass made, and if the size is a little bit off,
You
it's
can mail it
okay.
in.
Yeah,
Yep.
it doesn't matter. But when it comes to running shoes, you actually every inch of the shoe matters to a runner, and you can feel it. And so when we talk about product and new things being launched over the course when you've been working there and working with different people and running and all that, what are the innovations you've seen that really made a difference in running? Is it more comfort and foam in the midsole? Is it the way the shoe is, I don't know, angled? Is there more foam in the back that gives you more lift, or any number of things that you see individually, or you hear from your running club that's like, this shoe is like unbelievable because of this, and like maybe 10 years ago they're using shoes that are more basic at the time, but this is really getting to the point where these running shoes are like really engineered and innovative.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Great question. I think the transition from polyurethane to the new EVAs, which is ethyl vinyl acetate, has made the shoes quite a bit lighter. The rubber on the bottom of the shoe, some of it is blown rubber, some of it is more of a firmer rubber. There's been a lot more attention to detail in terms of that. And then the synthetic mesh uppers.
Yeah.
All of those things have really helped the running shoe become something that is lighter, fits better, and feels a lot better on the runner's foot. But more often than not, I think that it's the brand itself that has invested more in the running shoe. And I think there are brands that really stand out when you talk about attention to detail.
Right.
And I think that most of the running store brands are doing that right now really well.
Well, one of the things Andy likes to talk about is it takes about 30 minutes to make a pair of shoes in a factory in Vietnam or in China or wherever, but it can take up to a year and a half of product development, all the stuff that goes around getting that shoe to the Pacer store in Fairfax. And it doesn't take a year and a half to create a Crocs. It doesn't take a year and a half to create a flip-flop. It takes a year and a half. That number is basically focused on performance running because of the R&D that go into the technical aspects, as Andy pointed out, on these types of shoes. But there are trends, right? Because none of us would go out and run in Cortezes, one of the first Nike running shoe. But it wasn't that long ago. There was this huge minimalist. People were running barefoot and Vibram, 5 finger. People were running around with barely any outsole.
I'm pretty sure the guy who ran the first marathon was running without.
I'm sure
maybe
he probably was.
Jesus sandals or something. Like Jerusalem cruisers, pushing himself to the limit. And then at the end, he did say he didn't want to do it again, and then the croaked.
And he was just running for his life anyway. But now it seems like cushion might be back because of some of the technologies you just mentioned. So talk to me about how you keep track of all those trends.
I actually, for me personally, that comes down to the running group.
Yeah.
And for me, there isn't really one standard set answer. No one size fits all.
Right.
Nothing 100% perfect. Because I do have one guy in our running group that he runs in sandals. I mean, he just all the time. They're like the running sandals. I'm sure you guys have seen those. And he's never had any injuries. He worked his way up in them very successfully, and he's comfortable with them. But at the same time,
does he have a toga on too?
At the same time, the sort of like the full-bodied, really nice and cushioned running shoes, like the high performance. Max cushion shoes, they're great.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to the individual that is wearing the shoe. And more often than not, I'd recommend trying to stay away from the minimalist faction of running shoes, because if you're looking for a shoe that you're going to go the distance in, you want something with some good support and something that works well for you, and we can definitely help you find that.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know, because I'm not a minimalist guy. I like wearing I like my mind's going blank right now, but I like shoes with cushion on them. The Nike Pegasus is one of my kind of classic go-tos. It has a lot of support, because the times I've run in quasi minimalist shoes, it's killed my feet at the end of the day, or my back, or whatever the case is. So it seems to me trends can kind of take over a segment of the industry, even if it's not meant for everyone within that industry.
Yeah, now we're kind of going to that maximalist style, like the Hoka, just very cushioned, but still nice and supportive as well.
Right.
I'm waiting for a fully foam shoe that I can just slip in and it foams around, and I can just walk around like I'm walking on the moon, bouncing around.
It's coming, man.
I know.
Coming.
Maybe I'll put some springs in the back to really propel me forward.
They had some of the catalogs on airlines in the back. They'd have these shoes you could buy to help you dunk and stuff, and they had really had legitimate springs.
Well, if you get 14 inches of foam on your foot, then anybody can dunk, right? That's like MTV's when they used to throw those basketball games where they had the 20 foot.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they were jumping on trampolines and everything like that.
Like the 5-pointers.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so here's your chance. You're speaking to the footwear industry. You're a runner. You got a lot of people coming in your store buying running shoes. What are brands missing? What would you like to tell them, either in terms of how they're marketing, how they should market differently certain types of shoes, or what are you hearing in store? A lot of people are complaining about something, or what should the industry? What are we missing here? In terms of running, what What do you think would really help running shoes propel them even further from what they are now?
That's a really great question. I mean, so far as what the industry is doing now, I think the industry is really working hard to keep up with the demand. I mean, with what's going on right now in running, and I don't know so much that I can identify just one thing that any one brand could do better. I know that every one of these brands is working really hard with Run Specialty, and I think that the more they work with Run Specialty, the more we can actually help get those brands in positive light. Because we try and do that every day. I could say nothing bad about a single brand that we have there, but just certain aspects makes it a little bit more difficult than others to promote the brand. But we work with every single one of them equally, and we just make sure that they're getting ahead. And I hope that they continue to work with us the way they have been.
Yeah, and you had 4 or 5 locations now, but you also have online as well. Is that right? So
yes,
you guys have transitioned. That's one of the things when we talk to independent retail chains, the debate internally about whether or not you transition online and put your products up online, and now just the consumer expects it, whether you're 4 stores or 5,000 stores. People just expect to have access to your product online these days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our online store works really hard. They're great. We try and get stuff out really quickly.
Yeah,
and we've got a really good selection.
And it's just when you purchase online, it's just a draw off your internal inventory.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have inventory? Do you have a warehouse, or is everything within the stores that you maintain?
We do have a warehouse. Actually, most of our shoes that are going out online do come from the Fairfax store.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Got it. Awesome. Sweet. Well, you know what, Doug, what you have kind of informed me is that what we hear all the time from the prognosticators who we know and love and who come on the show is that performance is dead, that the dude next to you in church is wearing sneakers just like the CEO in the C-suite, just like the guy at, as Andy likes to talk about, brunch. Everyone's wearing sneakers, and none of it's for performance. No one's going out and running these sneakers. But there is a segment of our industry that's vibrant, and it's a specialty running place, and that's where performance actually really matters. So.
Well, I think the investment in the performance is bleeding down into the comfort level of everything else, right? It's kind of like the whole NASA effect. Like, we spend all this money in NASA, and everybody's like, especially nowadays, why are we spending so much money to go out? Well, because it brings us microwaves, and it brings us televisions, and it brings us quality of life. It's the same with the shoe, the performance category, the investments, and the long engineering and the programming and everything else that goes into that goes back down. So when you say performance is dead, it's actually completely incorrect.
That's right.
Performance has to be alive if you actually want comfort to bleed into basic shoes.
Great point.
So
trickle down footwear economics.
That's right.
Yep.
That's
I love it.
Voodoo economics. Voodoo shoes.
Buy those in New Orleans. All right. So with that, Doug, thanks a ton. It's time for Jasmine. Jasmine, what are we doing today? What segment are you dropping on us?
We're gonna do the what you got, what you getting, because you probably have some shoes that you're interested in getting. Because I know working in the footwear industry, there's always something I want. So I can't imagine working in a shoe store. But you will share with us what you got, running edition, and what you're planning on getting.
Yeah. So what's on your feet right now?
Yeah, I got a pair of Bondi 5s from Hoka on right now.
Okay.
Right on.
And what I'm gonna get. I'm probably going to get the new Bondi once it comes out.
Okay.
It should be
Tell us what that is.
This summer, right?
So the Bondi is a Hoka running shoe. It's a maximalist style running shoe. I'm kind of a just slightly bigger guy, so I need something with some good cushioning.
So you say maximalist, it's like a lot of foam in there, a lot of midsole comfort.
A lot of foam. So the Hoka's got an active foot frame, so it wraps around your foot, and it gives you both lateral, outside, medial, inside support. It's got a really nice soft heel, and it's got a meta rocker in the midsole that just gives you a nice amount of support and just kind of pushes you forward like a rocking chair.
Hugs, not drugs.
Footwear hugs, not forward drugs.
Matt, what you got?
What do I got? One of the things I talked about is Pegasus. So I love wearing Pegasus. I run in Pegasus since we are doing the running edition. I think they're up to like 35, Pegasus 35 or something crazy like that because they've been around so long. What I want to get is I do want another pair of Hokas because I do have a pair and I run in them And they are. I need a lot of cushion. I've learned that over the years. So I'll pick up the next pair of Hokas. Chris Hillier, watch out! Here we come for you. But that leads to the question: What's a good? If you're an active runner, you're doing 20 miles a week. Let's just say you're kind of you're an active suburban, in your 40s kind of runner. How often should you be changing out your shoes? How often should you be going to get what you want to get?
Yeah.
So depending on how much mileage you're doing per month and per week, that actually is going to make a huge difference. Our general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months, 300 to 500 miles.
Okay.
But depending on what you're doing with the shoe, and if you're walking in them, you can go up to a year. If you're a little bit under the sort of threshold that we say 3 to 6 months, go up to about 8 months. But really just listen to your body. If you start feeling aches and pains in the knees and the shins, it's probably time for a new pair.
Every 3 months is really good. Like, as an industry spokesman, 3 months is good. Don't ignore it like your oil change sticker. Go in and get your every 3 months.
Shouldn't we have like a little ruler? It's kind of like, when you get your tires like measured. If it's less than an inch, you need to get your new tires, your treads down.
Right.
Should we have like a ruler that you can put on the bottom of a shoe to see if the rubber? You're like, no, you need to buy. Glad you came in today, buddy. I'm gonna hook you up. My manager said I can give you a special.
Yeah, Doug told me 50% off.
Wow, that's great. I didn't even know I needed that. Yeah, you need some socks with that too. All right, for long-term health of your shoes.
That's right.
Jasmine, what you got?
Okay, so don't pay attention to my feet at the moment, but I do have some.
Oh, snap. I did. You told me not to do it, and I looked down.
Jasmine actually has like a costume change every day at work. She'll bring in like 3 pairs in her bag, like any woman going to work.
Look, I'm a woman of many styles.
Are you hosting the Oscars? What's going on over there?
Of many styles. Okay, but I have a new Under Armour Phantom sneakers that I work out in. Now, I don't do 20 miles anytime. That's not happening. But there are a pair of new Reeboks that are called the Float Riders or Float Ride. They're like lime green and white. They're lightweight. The Under Armour ones are a little
specific to the colorway. So
yeah.
She's been eyeballing these.
Because the Under Armour ones, they're really good, but you can feel them, and I kind of wanted some that like you can barely feel that are on your feet. Yeah. So that's the ones that I'm going to get.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Andrew?
I am wearing Sperry today. It is summertime.
This is running edition. I lied. I'm not even wearing Pegasus. So.
Well, to a certain extent, according to U.S. Customs, I could run in these and it would be considered athletic.
That's true. That's
so,
a good
point. What is a running shoe? Well, it depends on
that's a great point.
Whether you're in the government and make those decisions where you think you could run in these.
Yeah.
Please.
Chuck Taylors are still, Doug, just so you know, it's a little beef we have with the government. Chuck Taylors are still classified as an athletic shoe, as if you can go and play basketball in Chucks.
Sure.
So the duty rate is higher than they would normally be if they were a casual shoe, which we all wear Chucks for, casual.
We should mention as well, what is the average duty rate for a running shoe? 20% around?
20%, yep.
Around 20%. So that means that the cost of the shoe because of the duty rate is much higher than it should be.
Doug and his team have to pass that markup on to the consumer. It's just a cost of the good, so it's automatically a markup.
Right. And if that 20% was taken away, you have some price reductions, but you have much more put into that innovation we were talking about earlier.
Right.
We can make the new thing.
That's right.
What I'm going to get is probably some more ASICs. I can't go specific. I think Jasmine goes drilled down to like an SKU.
Hey,
what color are the eyelets? Tell us what color the eyelets are.
R24567 unit price 1.45. Like, I got a pair of Asics recently, and I hadn't had Asics in a very long time, but the comfort level is fantastic in those. And I think a lot of, like we talked about it today, a lot of brands are putting a lot of effort into figuring out what that value add is in the comfort, you know? And I think they'll continue to do that. And I guess the next big thing too is, because I focus a lot on innovation stuff, what I'm very interested in seeing is, you talked a little bit about how the shoes have been innovative because they give more comfort, but they're also lighter. And what I'm really interested to see is how the industry can take these innovations on kind of the lattice that you see in some of the shoes that are happening, where the midsole is latticed to cut out all that foam, so it's a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
How they can get that to customize it, but at a rate that people can still afford, right? Because at this point, it's probably $300, $400. The Adidas shoes that they're pulling out of the vat and doing is probably around $600 to $800. So. Hopefully over time that can flow in, and we'll see that be the next generation of of something that the average runner could actually afford. So
Yeah.
that's something to think about and look forward to. But this has been a fun episode.
Yeah, Doug, thanks a ton, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate
What's
it.
give us a website so our listeners can hit up Pacers online.
So www.runpacers.com. That's our website.
Cool. Thanks for coming in.
Yep.
And our website is shoeandshow.com, and you can find all our episodes from all our guests, past episodes. We're over 100 episodes now of educating you on all things shoes. We're peeling back the curtain to look at the footwear industry on the business side, the operations, the marketing, how people make strategic decisions in this kind of ever-changing business environment, from making the shoe to selling the shoe. For Matt Priest, Jasmine, I'm Andy Polk. This is Shoe In, and until next time, we are out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.